Welcome to EdTech Spark, everyone. What's going on in the world of EdTech? Seems like a lot, as always.
It definitely does. It's hard to keep up with everything that's happening, the innovation, the funding, and yeah, the controversies too.
Exactly. So where do you want to start today? I saw that Classover news, pretty interesting, right? A NASDAQ listed EdTech firm aiming to raise $500 million for a Solana treasury push. That's a lot of faith in blockchain.
It is substantial. My initial reaction is always, okay, let's see how this plays out. Blockchain and education, decentralized platforms, it all sounds very futuristic and exciting, but I always wonder about the practical application and the real impact on students.
Oh, I hear you. I mean, the hype around Web3 has been insane, but the idea that Classover isn't just buying SOL, but building a decentralized learning platform on Solana, that's different, isn't it? It's not just about speculation, it's about building something new.
True, but the question becomes, what does decentralization actually offer in the context of education? Is it just a buzzword, or are there tangible benefits for students, teachers, and schools? Like, what problem is it solving that current platforms aren't?
Well, theoretically, it could offer greater transparency and control over data. Think about dynamic consent, which we've touched on before. Imagine students owning their learning data, controlling who has access, and even potentially monetizing it.
Puts the power back in their hands, right?
Puts the power back in their hands.
Yes, and I think that control of data is something that parents are worried about. The point about dynamic consent, we touched on it last time. Having a more transparent way of consent in EdTech is certainly more modern. I think we both agree about that.
Exactly. I also think about accessibility. Imagine a decentralized platform that's resistant to censorship and offers learning resources available to everyone, regardless of location or political climate.
Okay, yes, in theory, that's fantastic. But then you run into the practical realities. What about internet access, especially in underserved communities? How do you ensure equitable access to a decentralized platform when so many students are still struggling with basic connectivity?
That's a fair point. And it connects with what we talked about with that EdTech fellowship in Africa, focusing on offline solutions. I guess the ideal scenario would be a hybrid approach where you have decentralized platforms that also offer offline access and support.
A hybrid model makes sense. And thinking about Classover specifically, I'd be curious to see their business model and how they plan to generate revenue while maintaining this decentralized ethos. It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
It is, and honestly, it's a little risky, but sometimes you need those bold moves to disrupt the status quo. Plus, the fact that their stock jumped almost 40% after the announcement suggests that investors are intrigued by the potential. It's not just hype.
It could be investor enthusiasm for anything blockchain related, to be fair. I think we need to see some concrete results before we declare it a success. But yes, it is interesting. Changing the topic a little bit to another comeback story, what do you make of BYJU'S 3.0?
Oh man, BYJU'S talk about a roller coaster, right? From being the golden child of Indian EdTech to facing serious allegations and financial troubles. It's a pretty epic story.
Absolutely. It's a cautionary tale almost. It shows you that having a great product isn't enough. You need solid processes, ethical practices, and a sustainable business model. And it's also a lesson in scaling too quickly.
100%. The article mentions their aggressive sales tactics and how they were basically pressuring parents into taking out loans. That's just not okay. And it ultimately backfired, damaging their reputation and eroding trust.
It did immense damage, and I think it's important to learn from the past. So the mention of questionable sales tactics that was reported about what was happening, the pressure and everything.
Completely, which the article highlights. But I'm also intrigued by this BYJU'S 3.0 angle. The fact that they're talking about AI-driven changes. I'm curious to see how they're planning to use AI to improve the learning experience and address some of their past shortcomings.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Will AI be a genuine force for good, or will it just be a shiny new toy that distracts from the underlying issues? I am still not convinced about magic bullets and AI.
Well, think about personalization. AI could analyze student data to identify learning gaps and provide tailored instruction. We've talked about platforms that do it already, like Edia in our show and tell section. It could be a game changer.
Yes, and AI could also automate some of the more tedious tasks for teachers, freeing them up to focus on building relationships with students and providing individualized support. If used thoughtfully.
Exactly. It's about empowering teachers, not replacing them. And the article mentions the importance of student-centric approaches, interactive learning, and critical thinking. Those are all positive signs.
I agree. But they need to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. They need to demonstrate a genuine commitment to ethical practices, transparency, and student well-being.
Mm. And they need to address the needs of India's rural population, not just focus on the English-speaking elite. That's a huge market opportunity, but it requires a different approach.
Definitely. Low cost, accessible content in local languages is key. And that ties into what we were saying about the EdTech Fellowship in Africa, the importance of localized solutions that address specific needs.
It's all connected, right? EdTech can't be a one-size-fits-all solution. It needs to be tailored to the specific context and the needs of the learners.
Agreed. The article also touches on something interesting, that many of BYJU'S former employees are now entrepreneurs themselves. That's a testament to the impact they had on the EdTech landscape, even if it wasn't always positive.
Right. It's like they inadvertently created a whole new generation of EdTech innovators. And that's kind of cool in a way. And maybe that is the start of a new wave of tech in India, which is interesting.
It is, and hopefully they've learned from BYU's mistakes and are building more sustainable and ethical businesses. Sticking with the African continent, what do you think about CC Hub and MasterCard backing 12 EdTech startups to boost learning in Africa?
That's fantastic news. I love seeing initiatives that are focused on empowering local entrepreneurs and addressing the specific challenges in African education. The focus on offline, AI-driven, and scalable tools is particularly promising.
Absolutely. Given the limited internet access in many parts of Africa, offline solutions are crucial. And the fact that half of the selected startups are led by women is also a great sign.
Definitely, we need more diversity and inclusion in the tech sector, and this is a step in the right direction. And $100,000 in non-equity funding, plus product development support and mentoring, that's a pretty sweet deal for these startups.
It is. And the focus on measuring impact is also critical. We need to know what works and what doesn't, so we can direct resources to the most effective solutions. In that sense, what are some of your favorite things from the EdTech show until this month?
Oh, fun. So much cool stuff. I was really intrigued by that EDA AI-powered MTSS platform. The idea that it can analyze hundreds of data points to pinpoint student needs and provide actionable interventions, that's powerful.
I can see the appeal, but that sounds like a lot of data collection. I go back to the point of worrying about student privacy and data security. I would need to know more about how they're protecting that data and ensuring ethical use.
Fair point. But if it's done right with proper safeguards and transparency, it could really help teachers personalize learning and support students who are struggling. The unified student profiles and automated intervention workflows sound incredibly efficient.
Maybe, but it also sounds like it could potentially lead to over-reliance on data and a neglect of the human element. I am concerned about the reliance of data. Exactly. And I was also curious about the Optoma Creative Touch 3 Series interactive displays. Those things look really cool, and the Google EDLA certification adds a level of functionality, so much better than the old blackboards and chalk dust.
Oh, definitely. Interactive displays can really transform the classroom and make learning more engaging. Wireless collaboration, screen sharing, it's all about creating a more dynamic and collaborative learning environment.
True. But again, it's not just about having the fancy technology. It's about how teachers use it and how it impacts student learning. If they just replace the old blackboard with an interactive display but continue teaching in the same way, it's not going to make much of a difference.
That's so true. The technology is just a tool. It's the teacher's skill and creativity that really bring it to life. And actually, I think it is the teacher that is really critical, not the shiny device.
Agreed. And it's also important to remember that not all schools have the resources to invest in these kinds of technologies. We need to ensure that all students have access to quality learning experiences, regardless of their school's budget.
Which goes back to the whole equity issue. How do we level the playing field and make sure that all students have the opportunity to succeed and maybe make the old tech still relevant, which I know is hard?
It's a huge challenge, and there's no easy answer. But I think it starts with investing in teachers, providing them with the training and support they need to effectively integrate technology into their classrooms.
Absolutely. And we need to listen to teachers and students, get their feedback on what works and what doesn't. EdTech should be driven by the needs of the users, not the other way around.
Yes, and that brings us back to dynamic consent. We started our conversation by discussing dynamic consent, and the idea that it can give families more control over student data. I'm more and more convinced about it now.
Yeah, it's all about transparency and empowering families to make informed decisions. And I think that's the key to building trust in EdTech. Families also need to adjust permissions as new technologies emerge and their comfort levels evolve.
Definitely. It's an ongoing conversation, not a one-time decision. So, dynamic consent systems can create personalized digital interfaces that enable two-way communication between students, parents, and EdTech providers.
Exactly. And that kind of transparency can go a long way towards addressing concerns about data privacy and security, because families can access information about which platforms their children use, what data is collected, how it's analyzed, and with whom it's shared, all presented in understandable terms rather than legal jargon.
Yep. So, really, it's all about finding the right balance between innovation, equity, and ethics. EdTech has the potential to transform education, but it needs to be developed and implemented thoughtfully and responsibly.
I completely agree. And it's an ongoing process. We're constantly learning and evolving. EdTech is like a living thing, always changing and adapting.
It is. Okay, so what are our key takeaways today? I think for me, it's the importance of focusing on real world utility and ethical considerations, not just getting caught up in the hype around new technologies. Also, that a mix of online and offline models can be helpful, and dynamic consent is needed. It is also that there is no silver bullet.
I agree with all of that. For me, it's about the potential of EdTech to democratize education and empower learners, but also the need to address the digital divide and ensure equitable access for all. And that AI has potential, but we must use it ethically.
Great points. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on EdTech Spark.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be back next time with more EdTech news and insights.